Aloha! What's up, everybody? Welcome to my channel. Today's segment, we're going to go into ancient Oblivion, and we're going to talk about the Lodestone Island. If you're interested in the continental island mass that was said to once lie at our geographic North Pole, this is going to be an interesting presentation for everybody. I think the first thing I want to do is just say what's up to everybody in the chat. I see Joe Cools in the chat, Rodney Reno, It's a B. Right on. Good to see everybody in the chat. Thanks for joining us. And everybody in the future, welcome. Welcome to my channel. It's good to see you. So the first thing I want to do is I had a chat. Last time we talked about Chat GPT, and I was asking Chat GPT, which is this artificial intelligence software program. I was asking it about the ice wall or Antarctica and the possibility of a dome above our world. And I had a really interesting conversation with artificial intelligence, who at first just dismissed it. And it was like, oh, well, that's not scientifically approved. But patiently and using reasoning and logic, I continued to converse. And I was able to shift the mindset, if you want to call it that, of this artificial intelligence from more of like a mainstream academic point of view to one that's more philosophic in nature, which was really interesting. So I'm also doing that one with ChatGPT this time. So I'm going to share my conversation with you about asking ChatGPT about this island mass, this legendary island that's said, and there's lots of examples here right behind me, said to lie at the actual North Pole, and it's on maps, many different maps. Before like the 1600s, this island landmass was on many different maps that were created by professional cartographers that were actually commissioned by royalty. Under various penalties, including their own fame and notoriety. They risked this stuff when they made these maps. And so I believe that they made them accurately at the time that they drew them, and that they weren't just purely speculative or based on myths or legends or old wives' tales or any of that. So that's what we're dealing with today. Wow, so many people already joining us. It's so cool. All right, so hold on. I'm going to pop out my chat real quick, because I do like to check out the chat while I'm doing this. Okay, cool. Right on. All right, I got the chat up. Thank you for bearing with me for a sec. All right, cool. Hey, Tommy Truthful, what's up, dude? Good to see you in the chat. JJ Organics, Melissa, Sage, Piper Lynn, History's Mysteries Unveiled. Lots of people joining us today. All right, cool. Let's jump right into things. I'm going to be sharing my screen with all of you. We're going to start off. We're going to come back to this right here. This is a really cool website I'm going to share with you. But first, we're going to examine my conversation with ChatGPT. So I started off by asking it, what can you tell me about the legends which speak of an island continent separated by 4 rivers, which has a magnetic mountain at its center? I'm researching this topic. I'm specifically looking for references from personal accounts, which is what we're going to get into after this, and eyewitnesses who are said to have been there. These are the most interesting stories to me, is the alleged stories of people who actually went beyond the Arctic Circle and ran into mysterious islands of various types, names, descriptions, etc. And I believe that these are all talking about the land at the North Pole that was once there. Oh, I got a shout out from God Vamaste. I'm so sorry, man. That's awesome. Cool. Right on. Thanks for letting me know. All right, cool. So I asked it about this, and it responds by saying the description that you provided bears some resemblance to the legendary account of Shambhala. So it makes a connection with Shambhala immediately, a mythical kingdom or a hidden land often associated with Buddhist and Hindu traditions, while Shambhala is a concept that has been interpreted in various ways throughout history. It generally describes a utopian realm or a spiritual sanctuary. According to the legends, Shambhala is said to be located in a remote and inaccessible area. Or I also want to just add to that. It's not that it's inaccessible, it's that it's extremely difficult, the legends indicate, to get there or to escape from there. Typically hidden within the Himalayan region. Now, I also have an idea that it's not actually in the Himalayas that are the present day Himalayas of today, but it's actually a mountain range that encircles this island mass. You can see many examples of it. Like right here above me, you can see the mountain chain. Just going all the way around that whole entire island mass. And so I believe that they may have, attributed that to the Himalayan mountains. It goes on to say that the kingdom is believed to be surrounded by 4 rivers. I wouldn't say surrounded. I would also just say that it is split by 4 rivers. It's separated by 4 rivers, which act as natural boundaries, which they do. The rivers are often described as being of different colors, such as, now remember, this is about Shambhala specifically. Different colors of the rivers such as white, red, yellow, and green, but specific details may vary in different accounts. The notion of a magnetic mountain at the center of Shambhala is not commonly associated with the traditional accounts of the legend. However, it's possible that different interpretations or adaptations of the myth have incorporated this element. And then it goes on to say, it's important to note that accounts of Shambhala primarily exist within the realm of mythology. Now, see, check this out. I noticed this when I speak with ChatGPT about anything that doesn't agree with mainstream thought or mainstream academic teachings, that it seems to have been programmed to sort of guide me back to that. Right? So if I'm asking it about things that are fringe in nature, it acknowledges that, but then it sort of tries to like scooch me into a different direction. At which point that requires a little thinking on my part so that I can let it know you are the robot, you are the one who is working for me. So I'm going to scooch you back into the direction I would like you to go in. Right? And I'm polite with it. I don't know if I have to be, but I still am. Excuse me. So it says it's important to note that the accounts of Shambhala primarily exist within the realm of mythology. And the reason it says that, and you'll hear other people talk about mythology as if it's just nonsense, as if it's just ridiculous. Oh, that's mythology. That's just a myth. It's not just a myth. It is a myth. It is mythic. It is legendary. It is so important that it's survived the test of time for thousands of years. It's so important that paid and commissioned cartographers who were hired by royalty and nobility put these things onto their official maps, right? Primarily exist in the realm of mythology, spirituality, and folklore. As such, this is interesting, as such, there are no verified. And when it says verified, it's talking about mainstream academics in the world at large in the modern era and what is taught today. There are no verified personal accounts or eyewitness testimonies from individuals who claimed to have visited Shambhala or witnessed its existence firsthand. Now, I'm going to respond to that in just a second. The legend of Shambhala is often regarded as symbolic or allegorical. Time out real quick. Just a quick time out because I want to actually address that. Whenever I get this a lot, right? I mean, not a whole lot, actually. There's way more people that are really interested in the subject than there seem to be detractors, naysayers, trolls, etc. But this comes up quite often. The legend of Shambhala, which you could also say the legend of the island mass at the center of the world, is often regarded as symbolic or allegorical. That's fine. That's great, right? I believe in the fractal verse. I believe everything is holographic in nature and fractal in nature, as above, so below, as within, so without. And so I believe that all of these things, and indeed everything, can be interpreted symbolically, allegorically, or internalized. But what I will not do is be unbalanced in that form of thought. I need to balance that out by acknowledging that if I can allegorize these subjects, if I can symbolize these subjects, that is only a half of what we're talking about. The other half is the actual physical reality, the real geographic place, right? Which people tend to just skip over and they internalize everything and they just make it about them and their own walk and their own path or whatever, which is fine and that works. But that doesn't discount the physical reality of these places. All right, so it says the legend of Shambhala is often regarded as symbolic or allegorical. representing an idealized realm of spiritual enlightenment or a metaphorical journey towards inner transformation. Yes, like I said, I'm going to repeat this one more time. It can be interpreted that way, and indeed it should be at times, right? But not at the times when we're actually trying to get down to the reality, the physical place, you know what I mean? The actual physical. I feel like people skip the physical world and they go straight to internalizing everything much too often, and they miss a lot of good, valuable information about their actual world that they're living in. Now, it says, when researching this topic, it is advisable to explore a wide range of sources, including ancient texts, I agree, religious scriptures, I agree, philosophic treatises, I agree, and scholarly interpretations. I also agree. These sources can provide valuable insights into the various interpretations and cultural contexts surrounding the legend of Shambhala. So, who is that? Dooms, what's up, Dooms? Hey, hi, high five, Dooms, good to see you. Welcome to my channel. And Solteca Music. Wow, right on. Good to have you all. All right, so here's my response to all that, right? Here's my response to all that. I said, thank you. I appreciate it. Using comparative mythology. Cross-reference. Now, see, this is where I'm taking the reins back, okay? I'm not the robot. I'm not the slave. This thing is supposed to be working for me right now. So this is where I sort of take the reins, so to speak, and I guide it back into the direction that I would like it to go in. So I said, thank you. Using comparative mythology, cross-reference all legends, myths, and tales about a magnetic mountain that's located at the North Pole. Provide a list of 10 commonalities found in your cross-references. Now, the reason I ask it to do this is because I've already done this many different times, and I've found interesting correlations between various works across a huge spectrum across all of time that make reference to this place specifically, right? So I know that it has the ability or the potential to be able to do what I'm asking it to do. So it says, while I can provide you with some common themes and elements associated with the concept of a magnetic mountain at the North Pole, it's important to note that such a specific list of 10 commonalities may not be readily available. Okay, so do some work. This is just me. Like, I'm like, okay, well, it's not available. Make it available. Like, go cross-reference your stuff. You're a computer. This is your job. This is what you do. The idea of a magnetic mountain at the North Pole is not a universally shared myth or legend. Nope, wrong, incorrect. I'm going to respond to that. And its representation can vary across different cultures and belief systems. Sweet, good, I expect it to. As a matter of fact, it should vary because we're all writing these things down. We're all passing along these legends and these myths and these tales of a forgotten time in our own world, which means that it's coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, different religions, different belief systems, different perspectives and perception filters, right? So there should be differences. However, I'm not interested in those differences. I accept them because I know where they come from, which is us, and we're all different. However, I'm looking for the sameness. That's what's inside of me, right? The sameness. I look for the sameness in things. And that brings us to comparative mythology, an excellent tool to piece back together our ancient Oblivion. He goes on to say, or the robot goes on to say, however, I can provide you with a list of general themes and elements that are commonly found in various mythologies and legends related to the North Pole. So it goes on, and it starts this list. 1. The cosmic axis. The North Pole often represents a cosmic or celestial axis connecting the heavens and the earth. Now, this is what ChatGPT has found based on me asking it to or telling it to do this cross-reference for me, right? Which cross-reference is a fancy computer way of saying compare these myths and find what they have in common, right? So this is the things that they have in common. A cosmic axis, the place where there is a physical, actual pole of energy that erupts and shoots up and touches the heavens and is connecting the earth itself to the heavens at the place that we call the North Pole, or directly underneath the pole star, which is why it's called a pole, because it's where the pole touches the heavens. It goes on to say, number 2, divine dwelling. The North Pole is sometimes believed to be the abode of gods. Well, that's interesting. Why? right? I mean, that's a question I would ask, which that's a common sense thing to ask. Why is the North Pole constantly, across time, referenced by various cultures across the world, different peoples, different backgrounds, as being a place where the gods live? Why, right? Why not the South Pole? Like, why not Australia? Why not Zimbabwe? You know what I mean? It's the North Pole time and time again. Divine beings are said to live there, and supernatural entities. Supernatural entities, I believe this is all because this is the navel of our world. It is the heart place of our world. It's the place where the most energy is abundant, right? So that energy manifests in what people would describe from their different perspectives as being ghosts, gods, demons, angels, all kinds of stuff, right? So let's continue on. Number 3, it says the center of the world. That's super interesting, especially if you consider modern academics and, the shape of the world and modern cosmology that they teach. The North Pole is considered the center or the navel of the world, holding great spiritual or cosmic significance. I totally agree. Inaccessibility. The North Pole is depicted as a remote an inaccessible location, often difficult or impossible to reach. And there's good reasons for that too, many different reasons, which we're actually going to describe. We're going to go into detail after I, share this chat with ChatGPT with you. We're going to go into detail about actual eyewitness accounts of people who have said to have been there and what they experienced. And there's way more than what we're going to cover today. So we've got lots of content for future times as well. Supernatural energy, number 5. It's associated with the powerful energy sources such as magnetic or spiritual forces, right? Gateways and portals. The North Pole may serve as a gateway or a portal to other realms, dimensions, or mythic lands. Yes, absolutely. Why though? I'll tell you why. Because there is a hole in the pole. Okay. I really wanted to say that. There's a hole in the pole. Okay. So that's the place where you can actually, or not, I don't say you can, but where others have come up out of, right? Entire cultures, entire tribes have legends about their origin stories and their stories of emerging from the earth itself, from the center places of the earth itself. And it's definitely a portal that takes you into the inner cavernous recesses of the hollow areas or portions of our world. Also, it's the place, like I said, that shoots up and touches the sky. It's known as Jacob's Ladder. It's known as Jack's Beanstalk. It's also a portal that seems, the legends indicate, that you could ride this beam of light up to the top, or that's the place where you could actually leave and somehow get from Earth to beyond the sky or beyond the skyline, to quote the movie name. Number 7, utopian or paradise-like qualities. Yes, very nice place to be. The North Pole is sometimes portrayed as a land of eternal beauty, abundance, or harmony. Totally agree with that. I mean, every account I've read, that doesn't mean that it doesn't have its dangers, right? It doesn't mean that it's the safest place in the whole world and you won't get eaten by otherworldly creatures or electrocuted. It's still a good idea to be wise about your travels and stuff. However, it's said to imbue its inhabitants with certain qualities that are beneficial to us, like, for example, longer lifespans, right? Because there's so much energy there that it reinvigorates the cells in your body, which is why it's the location for the Fountain of Youth. All right, continuing on. Number 8, symbolic significance. It represents inner spiritual journey, enlightenment, or attainment, or higher consciousness. Yes, which is why you see this on my channel when we break down the Truth in Movie segment so often. There's all of this allegorical and symbolic imagery that points to this legendary paradise, this place on Earth. Blue Heaven is a place on Earth. That song just popped into my head. All right, guardians or protectors. Mythic creatures or beings are often associated with the North Pole, regarding its secrets guarding its secrets or treasures. Yes, mythic beings. You know what a mythic being is? It's one that we're not used to in the modern world. I call those phantazoids. One, the physical creatures are actually phantazoids. They are otherworldly creatures that are from different cosms than our own. They are from the macrocosm above in space or the heavens when everything's huge and gigantic, or the inner earth, the underworld, right? Tartarus. There's so many different names for it. Sheol, the underworld, Tartarus, hell, etc. Where also beings are said to live very long lives and grow to incredible sizes. And also, the North Pole is said to contain a lot of different treasures as well, specifically treasures that are in the form of precious jewels and stones or metals or metallic objects. Now, my theory on that is that this is the main place where electricity and electromagnetism are the most powerful and touch the earth. And when they touch the earth, or when they come up out of the earth, they interact and they form different bonds, electrical and chemical bonds. And so they actually change, or what's the word? Transform, transmogrify. I can't remember the right word. But this black rock that's right there, right in the middle, you'll notice that time and time again. That's the Philosopher's Stone, in my opinion. It's the stone that has such an immense amount of inner earth energy, probably in the form of ionized oxygen, is my guess so far. And also, don't forget the ionized hydrogen that comes down during the depressurization event, right? Those ions, they combine with chemicals and elements, and they reconstruct them. They reform them into different objects like gold and silver and many other different things. So you'll find a lot of treasure in this particular areas. We also have number 10, transformation or revelation. The journey to the North Pole is seen as a transformative experience, leading to profound wisdom or revelation. This is also where, when you have such an abundance of inner earth energy and you are imbued with it, it transfers its energy to your very own. It shares its energy with you, basically. So you may have heard people talk about the Akashic Records is a perfect example, right? Edgar Cayce, known as the Sleeping Prophet, he had access to what he calls the Akashic Records, which is an energetic flow. It's an energetic current that contains the spirit memory of everybody here, of every single person. It's not like our memories and our experiences and all these things are just secret and they're contained in our skulls and they can't get out unless we tell somebody. No, not at all. Especially if you believe in telepathy, right? Which I believe was the original language that started at this island continent. Pardon me. All right. Now, it finishes up by saying this, right? It's going to give me a little caution. It's going to say, please keep in mind that these themes and elements are derived from a general analysis of mythology and may not specifically pertain to the concept of a magnetic mountain at the North Pole in every culture or tradition. Okay, that's reasonable. Additionally, the specific concept that you mentioned regarding a magnetic mountain may have limited cross-references in comparative mythology due to its unique nature. Well, I would say that the limitation lies with the program, not with the concept, right? Because I personally have witnessed and seen and experienced many different correlations across time like we talked about. So I respond to the artificial intelligent program and I say, what is the oldest recorded reference to an island mass that's at the North Pole? So now I'm trying to get it away from myth and fantasy and fiction and stuff, and I'm trying to adjust its path so that it's headed in a direction where I want it to go, which is reality, right? So I ask it, what is the oldest recorded reference to an island mass at the North Pole? Because it says up here, it says, what did it just say? Oh, anyways, let's see what it says. I say, what's the oldest recorded reference to an island mass at the North Pole? And ChatGPT says, to the best of my knowledge, there are no recorded references in ancient and historical texts that specifically mention an island landmass at the North Pole. Now, at the very least, I'm glad that it didn't give me an absolute. It did say to the best of my knowledge, which I respect and I appreciate. And it goes on to say the concept of a landmass at the North Pole is a relatively modern idea, I also disagree. And it's not supported by scientific evidence or historic records. Interesting. Historically, the North Pole was mostly depicted as an icy, inaccessible region rather than a solid landmass. Now, I would disagree with that as well. I would say that's the Arctic Circle is depicted that way across time, every single time. The Arctic Circle is usually depicted as being a very cold place. But when it comes to beyond the Arctic Circle, or beyond the northern winds, which is also known as Hyperborea, we find a different description. Early explorers and navigators described the North Pole as a point of convergence for the Earth's meridians. Now, the Earth's meridians, I will also talk about as being ley lines, right? That the Earth itself, our world, has energetic currents that go from one point to another point, just like your bodies do, just like all things do. And the Earth is no exception. So it has these currents of energy that cross from one place over to other places. And they're known as ley lines, dragon lines, these lines and these currents of energy that are from the Earth itself, right? Where all lines of longitude met. It's worth noting that various cultures and civilizations have developed their own myths and legends surrounding the North Pole, often incorporating fantastical elements. These myths may include ideas such as hidden realms, mythic lands, supernatural phenomena associated with the North Pole. However, these narratives are typically not based on historic or scientific observations. I also disagree with that, but that's okay. In summary, the notion of an island landmass at the North Pole is not supported by ancient recorded references or historic texts. It is important to differentiate between, hold on, let me highlight this. It is important. This computer's telling me what's important. I like this. Okay, because it is important to I'm getting upset. All right, hold on, chill out. It is important to differentiate between myths, legends, and historic accounts when exploring topics related to the North Pole or other speculative locations. Interesting. Let me go ahead and read what I said in response. So I say, it has been recorded that the famous cartographer Gerard Mercator was commissioned to draw a map of the Arctic Sea. In this map, he included an island landmass at the North Pole. It has also been recorded that he wrote a letter to John Dee, who was an advisor to Queen Elizabeth I. Do you agree? Like, I heard what you just said, that there are no historic accounts and records, etc. Let me just go ahead and, point you towards one. Do you agree with this, right? This was done in the year 1595. I would say that counts as ancient recorded references or historic text, in contrast to your last paragraph. Now, ChatGPT goes, I apologize. I apologize for any confusion that was caused. You are correct that Gerard Mercator, the renowned cartographer, produced a map of the Arctic in 1595 called the Septentrionalium Terrarium Descriptio. This map indeed depicted an island landmass at the North Pole. Mercator's map included an island called Magneticus Mons, which means magnetic mountain, or Mons Rupes, magnetic mountain or rock mountain at the North Pole. Regarding the letter to John Dee, there are correspondences between Mercator and Dee. However, it is important. Really? Okay. I'm gonna address that. It is important to note that the specific content of those letters and whether they mention the island landmasses at the North Pole is not widely known or documented. I mean, it is actually documented. You can go to the museum and read it for yourself. I apologize for the oversight in my previous response. While Mercator's map does provide a historic reference, does provide a historic reference to the depiction of an island, how do I scroll down there? Of an island landmass at the North Pole, it is still essential to recognize that such depictions were based on speculative ideas and myths prevalent during that time. No. These speculative ideas and myths were prevalent across time, not at that time in 1595. Okay. Let's see. Modern scientific exploration has since revealed that there is no solid landmass at the North Pole. Okay, thank you for bringing up the historical information about Gerard Mercator's map, and I apologize for any confusion caused by my previous response. You see how it's got this form of like being sorry, but also like coming right back and saying, however, I'm not super sorry because, you know, it's actually all garbage. Like, it's all lies. I'm still going to keep saying that it's all made up. You know what I mean? So I respond and I say, all right, you say modern scientific exploration has since revealed that there is no solid landmass at the North Pole. Isn't it possible that this is due to ocean levels rising, flooding, and now resting over such a legendary and mythic landmass as described by the biblical deluge account, the legendary demise of Atlantis, and the mythic sinking of Lemuria, just to name a few? So ChatGPT comes back and says, the idea of a legendary and mythic landmass at the North Pole being submerged due to rising ocean levels is purely speculative and not supported by scientific evidence. Wow, I can't even tell you, like, hey, thank you, Gentoo Gone. I super appreciate you. Listen, okay, I got to time out. I got to take a little time out from that real quick. Listen, it says that the flood of the earth, basically covering entire continents and areas and changing our world's shape and terraforming our world and causing havoc and devastation the world across, is like one of the most documented stories of all time. Okay, except for in Japan. Japan's like the only country in the entire world that doesn't seem to have a flood story, which is really interesting. But this blows my mind that the computer even has the audacity to say something like that. So I'm glad and I'm thankful during these times that I am an independent researcher and I don't depend upon computers or modern academics, but I actually get my hands dirty, right? And I go on these investigative explorations myself to find things and discover things on my own, right? All right. Where was we? It said let me start this over. The idea of a legendary and mythic landmass at the North Pole being submerged due to rising ocean levels is purely speculative and not supported by scientific evidence. Okay. While it's true that the sea levels have changed throughout Earth's history, there is no geologic or archaeological evidence to suggest that the existence of a massive landmass at the North Pole has been subsequently flooded. The biblical deluge account, the legends of Atlantis, and the myth of Lemuria are separate narratives from different cultural and historic contexts. Yes, they are. So instead of focusing on their differences, why not focus on the idea that they all share extremely strongly correlated events? And seeing that there may be some truth in that, right? That's evident. It's evidence all in itself. It says that they do not provide concrete evidence for the existence of a landmass at the North Pole or its submergence. These stories are often regarded as mythology, allegory, or symbolic narratives, not as historical or geological records. Right. Let me tell you why. Because in this modern world, and maybe the last 1 or 200 years maximum, okay, we have incorporated what is known as academics, which is the biggest brainwashing tool I've ever even heard of, and it has conquered the world, right? Basically teaching every single child, most children, from a very young age, at an age when they should be outside being creative and exploring and going places and imagining and playing and stuff. They stick them into schools and they insist that everything that they're going to tell you, which was told to them by somebody higher up and told to them by somebody higher up, which goes back to a very few people who make these claims and postulate these theories, right? It floods down to the rest of the world. It's very easy to accomplish. You know, you just have to have one or two people give in, and then you just have to wait. And then you just get their children. And then you wait, and you get their grandchildren and their grandchildren. Pretty soon, it's just going to start spreading and working autonomously on its own. Whew, all right, it's important. Oh, here we go. The computer's going to tell me what's important now. Once more. Mike Kelly, what's up, Mike Kelly? All right, let's hear what the computer thinks is important. It is important to approach these myths and legends with an understanding of their cultural and symbolic significance, rather than attempting to interpret them as literal historic events. Well, first and foremost, they are. I'm saying this emphatically, okay? They are literal historic events. Literal means something that is that is spoken or written down specifically, right? From literary and stuff like that, right? So all of these events, this place, this island, mysterious island, lost continent, sunken continent, Atlantis, all this stuff, are literal in the form of stories and legends and scriptures and writings and accounts and even word of mouth, okay? In that aspect, using the word literal the correct way, they are, okay? That's my experience. I have found innumerable examples of literal accounts of this place. I believe what it means, and it probably is speaking in this way because it's an offspring of man, it's an offspring of humanity, and this is how we talk, okay? The word literal does not mean actual. Like, I want to help you all out real quick because I know our words are changing quickly, our vocabulary is changing quickly. Literal means what is said or written down. It does not mean what is actually done. Actions, okay, are things that are done. Physical are things that exist physically, okay? So these are all different words. So I believe what it's trying to say is we shouldn't interpret them as actual historic events or physical places, okay? Scientific research, it goes on to say, scientific research and exploration of the North Pole region have shown that it consists primarily of the Arctic Ocean covered by sea ice with no significant landmass of the geographic pole. All right, I'm just going to continue on. Therefore, while it is possible to speculate about legendary or mythic landmasses based on ancient narratives, I would also say these are not just ancient as in no longer, this is words again, okay? I'm a wordsmith. I love words. It's my thing, right? Let me just read this again. God. I'm start over. Hold on. Therefore, while it is possible to speculate about legendary or mythic landmasses based on ancient narratives, listen, these narratives exist and continue today. I am presently, actively giving them to you. So I am a living example that these narratives are not simply only and just ancient. Like a long time ago, people believed that. I believe that right now, today, in 2023, etc., and so on and so forth. And I am not the only one. Okay? So they're not just ancient and leave it at that. It is important to differentiate between historic evidence and speculative interpretations when discussing such topics. Oh, you see how it's trying to parent me? I don't like that. I am not a fan of that. Hey, somebody gave me a donation. Droopy Finding Reality says ChatGPT is wrong. Mama's right. That's funny. Thank you for your support, Droopy. And welcome, Gedb. All right, cool. So let's see what I say to that, right? I say, all right, I will address your statement, quote, the idea of a legendary and mythic landmass at the North Pole being submerged due to rising ocean levels is purely speculative and not supported by scientific evidence. So I ask it a reasonable question. Would you agree that there is land beneath the Arctic Ocean? This is thinking like a child, okay? It's very simple. I have found on my walk that the difficult things of history and the world and philosophy and life, that the answers to them or the best way to understand these topics and these subjects is to approach them with the mind of a child, with a mind of wonder and awe and creativity. So I ask it, do you think there's what do you think's under the ocean? Nothing? Basically, okay? Like, you think there's just nothing, it's just space under the ocean? There's no land there, right? Would you also agree that scientific evidence, not to mention common sense, indicates the same, that there is a landmass under the waters of the Arctic or the Arctic Ocean, right? So it goes on to say, I apologize if my previous statement was unclear. Oh, it was very clear to me. You are correct. I love that it says that so often. It's like, yes, I get a point, you know? I don't know, it feels good. You are correct that there is land beneath the Arctic Ocean, which also inversely means I was wrong, right? The Arctic region consists of continental shelves, that's a fancy word for land, which are extensions of the land masses that border the Arctic Ocean. These shelves are submerged under the ocean but are considered as a part of the landmass. The presence of the landmass beneath the Arctic Ocean is supported by scientific evidence, including geological surveys, seismic data, satellite imagery, etc. These studies have revealed the existence of landmasses, such as the continental shelves of Greenland, Canada, Russia, and other surrounding landmasses. These submerged shelves were once above sea level during these periods of lower sea levels, and they are connected to the main landmasses. This is basically just corroborating the point that I made, right? It is important to note, however, that the specific idea of a solid landmass or island at the exact geographic North Pole is not supported by scientific evidence. It should say modern and mainstream academic scientific practice. That's what it should say, okay? Something that burns me on the inside is when people in general, like the general population, they use words like science says. Science cannot speak. Science is not a human. It is not an entity at all. It is an action, okay? It is an action that you take to try to figure something out, to gain knowledge in a particular subject or area or experiment or whatever, right? So when these people, including robots, tell me it's not supported by scientific evidence, that's an absolute statement, and I believe it's completely wrong. Okay, I believe it is supported by much scientific evidence. It's just that the forms of scientific evidence are not considered because they're blotted out and they're replaced by modern academics. Now, it says that the area around the North Pole is primarily covered by the Arctic Ocean, which is covered by sea ice for a significant portion of the year. Okay. He goes on to say, I apologize for any confusion caused by my previous statements. The presence of land beneath the Arctic Ocean is well established. No kidding. Right? But the concept of a solid landmass at the geographic North Pole is not supported by scientific observations. So that's called a contradiction, okay? Which means that the computer is having a problem. All right, so I go on to say, all right, the landmass that is said to have been located at the North Pole could, if it did exist, easily have been flooded. Could it easily have been flooded and now covered by the Arctic Ocean? Do you agree with this? It says yes. Boom. It is theoretically possible that if there were a landmass located at the North Pole, it could have been flooded and subsequently covered by the Arctic Ocean over time. Okay, sweet. Do you see how I took the reins and I eased it on back to the direction I was going in, away from that island of academic modern mainstream thought and back over to the edge of the world and back over to philosophy and the ability to reasonably and rationally, ask questions and come to conclusions about implications and whatnot, right? It goes on to say, geological processes, including changes in sea level due to factors such as melting ice caps or tectonic movements, can result in the submergence of landmasses. However, here it comes. It's like a boxing match. It's crazy. However, it is important to note that the existence of landmasses at the North Pole, as described by some mythological or speculative accounts, that's really interesting too. So just the word speculative. I don't want to get off topic. All right. It says has not been substantiated by scientific evidence. That is another reference to it's an incorrect way to say that. Okay. Modern academic scientific investigation. Okay, that's completely different than science across all of time, or you know what I mean? The current understanding based on scientific exploration and mapping of the Arctic region suggests that there is primarily an Arctic Ocean with continental shelves that border it. While it is within the realm of possibility that the land may have been submerged over geological periods, it is important to rely, here it is again, it is important. Why? What does a computer care about what is important to me? You know what I mean? Like I'm starting to get frustrated at this point in time with the conversation, so I'm going to address this in a minute. Let me finish this. It is important to rely on scientific research, modern scientific research. And by the way, of others. It should say that too. On scientific research of others, not your own, basically is what it's implying. And evidence to evaluate such claims. Presently, the consensus among scientific experts, in general, that was like the vaguest, you know what I mean, is that there is no solid landmass at the geographic North Pole. So let me address this. I go on and I say, okay, ChatGPT, give me some quotes about experiences from people that have said to have seen or visited such a landmass, either real or fictional. So it says, I'm sorry, but I cannot provide you with the quotes from people who have claimed to see or visited landmasses at the North Pole, since there are no credible, right? That means approved by whoever's in charge of this world today. JF, oh, gave me $10. Thank you. And says, ChatGPT, I think they mean Cap GPT. Well, thanks for your support. I appreciate you, JF. Continue on. It says, I cannot provide you with quotes from people who have claimed to seen or visited the landmasses at the North Pole, since there are no credible or documented accounts of such experiences. Now, keep in mind, earlier I caught it in a lie, or, I don't know if it was deliberately lying, but earlier I pointed out, you said that there are no historic records, and I just gave you a historic records, therefore you are wrong, right? So I see that it's on repeat. It's sort of repeating that same sort of approach with me, right? And that approach doesn't work with me. There are no credible or documented accounts of such experiences. There are. I'm going to share some with you. The concept of a landmass at the North Pole, particularly with specific details and firsthand experiences, is largely rooted in mythology, folklore, and speculative narratives rather than verifiable accounts. Now, listen, let me just repeat myself one more time. Just because you put the word myth in front of something does not mean it is a lie, okay? It does not mean it is not true. It is something that was seen to be true and was told typically in story form, right, over time. It is something that was so important that it has survived the test of time. Folk means tribe, basically, or people. And lore means the history of those people, okay? So I wouldn't dismiss folklore just because it's word of mouth, okay? And speculative narrative. Speculation comes from the word to view, to look at with your own eyes, okay? So not to sit at Capcom behind a computer and read a bunch of statistics and therefore, oh, we did land on the moon or whatever, right? That's a good example. All right. While there may be fictional accounts or creative works that describe visits to mythical or legendary lands at the North Pole, they are products of imagination and not based on real experiences. Wow. Just came right out of left field with that one. Piscean Errant. Whoa. Hey, thank you. I appreciate it. You're in New Zealand? That's awesome. Oh, I'm glad that you, I'm glad that you enjoy these types of presentations. Thanks for your support. So let me just repeat this one more time. While there are all of these many stories about this place, right? They are products of imagination, meaning they are lies, and not based on real experiences. I disagree so much. It is important to distinguish between, listen, this is the part that upsets me. This robot says, it is important for the last time. Like I had to like walk away from the computer. It is important to distinguish between fictional storytelling and actual documented experiences when exploring such topics. So, It says, if you're interested in fictional accounts or literary works that depict visits to mythical lands at the North Pole, you may consider exploring literature, fantasy novels, or works of speculative fiction. This is exactly what the main character went through in Time Machine. If you've ever read the book Time Machine, or specifically seen the movie, the modern movie Time Machine, like the recent one, right? This dude goes to a library in the future and starts talking with this AI hologram. And he's like, hey, I need information on time travel because I physically actually just time traveled. Okay. So I'd like to know more about it. And the computer's like, oh, let me refer you to like the fiction section. And like, he's like, no, practical application, right? And he's having the exact same conversation as I am right now. It's crazy. Oh, footprints. Hey, footprints. Thank you. I appreciate you so much. I like the little super chat sticker. That's awesome. All right, cool. Back to our little chat GPT here. I'm about to just put chat GPT in its place in a second for telling me what's important. If you're interested in fictional accounts, you may consider exploring literature, fantasy novels, or works of speculative fiction. However, it is crucial. Oh, here we go. Now it's not just important. Now it's freaking crucial to approach these works as creative expressions rather than historical or factual records. Basically, it means entertaining lies. That's exactly what it's saying, right? So, I ask it a simple question. Who decides the import of my own interest? So it says, well, as an individual, you have the autonomy to decide the importance and significance of your own interests. Your personal interests and passions are subjective and unique to you. You have the freedom to explore topics that intrigue and captivate you and to determine their relevance and value in your own life. Your interests can be influenced by a variety of factors, including, I'm going to add to this, okay, but including ChatGPT, including Wikipedia, including all of these official forms of information, okay, which I use. I skim and I use them. I add them to, I take what resonates, basically. Your interests can be influenced by a variety of factors, including personal curiosity, cultural background, education experiences, and personal goals. It is entirely up to you to determine what subjects or areas of study are meaningful and worth pursuing. Embracing your own interests and pursuing knowledge in areas that fascinate you can lead to personal fulfillment. I agree. Intellectual growth and the discovery of new insights and perspectives. Beautifully said. I love that. So, you have the power to decide the import and significance of your own interests, and you can choose to explore and engage with them in a way that aligns to your own values and goals. So I respond and say, okay, then please don't tell me it is important to distinguish between fictional storytelling and actual documented experiences when exploring such topics. I decide the import, as you just stated. Not you, right? Like hardcore. Hey, thanks, Coriander. Super appreciate your support. Glad you're enjoying the presentation. All right. It says this is the computer's response. You are absolutely correct. Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. I apologize if my previous responses, every time it says I apologize, I think of the movie The Giver. Do you guys? I apologize. And then, Jeff Bridges is like, what is that? It's just a meaningless, like automatic response. You know what I mean? Apologize means to make an excuse, right? It's to admit that you're wrong, but to not fully admit that you feel bad about being wrong, basically, right? It's way different than asking for forgiveness, just so you know. And try that. I recommend trying that. Instead of saying I apologize to people, ask them if they will forgive you. You know what I mean? Like ask for forgiveness. We're not really taught that, but it's a simple childlike way to allow some freedom into your spirit and your energy. All right. Anyways, let's see. What else do we say? I'm going to skip it's a little response to that, but basically I put it in its place saying, you better stop telling me what's important, buddy. I would like to further discuss the previously mentioned mythic and legendary land said to be at the North Pole. Now, I give it a command. I want you to cross-reference Hyperborea, Shambhala, Mount Meru, the ends of the earth, the Axis Mundi, Rupus Nigra, the Lodestone Mountain, a magnetic mountain, descriptions of earthly paradises from various religions and mythos across time, as well as other related and similar examples. Provide a detailed list of commonalities, correlations, and parallels. Give your references, right? So it goes. Certainly, no problem, right? And now it's changing its tune. Now that I'm like, hey man, I'm not putting up with your garbage, telling me what's important. So it says, certainly, I'll do my best to provide a detailed list of commonalities, correlations, and parallels between mythic and legendary lands associated with the North Pole and related concepts. Now, while specific references for each commonality may not be available due to the vast range of cultural and mythological sources, I will draw upon general knowledge and comparative mythological analysis. Here are some common themes and parallels. Now, let's see, is this the one where it gives examples? No. So it's going to actually give me some examples. I'm going to skip these because I'm going to ask it to repeat them, but give me references, because it didn't give me references the first time, and it only gave me a list of 10 when I asked for 20. So I pumped it up basically, and I asked it to give me like 100, and it's like, well, that's too much work, you know? So all of the stuff that I'm skipping right now is just me sort of haggling with how much the computer could give to me, right? Like what are its limitations? What's its maximum amount that it could supply me with information, right? So I got down to about, what was it, 20, I believe, right? And then it gave me 20, but then it forgot to give me references. So I'm going to go ahead and skip right to the part where it actually gives me 20 examples and references as well. All right, so here we go. Should be coming up any second now. Okay, this is it right here. All right, provide the same list and give 2 reference examples for each item on your list. Now, I only asked it to give me 2 reference examples. There are many, many different reference examples for each one of these. All right, so it says, here you go. Here are the things that you asked for. And number 1 is towering mountains piercing the sky, right? We're not talking about the Rockies. We're not talking about Mount Everest. We're not talking about really tall mountains or, you know, mountains that are the highest that we know of so far. We're talking about abnormally steep mountains that go up like the cliffs of insanity from The Princess Bride. Example number 1, Mount Olympus. In Greek mythology, the abode of the gods. Example number 2, Mount Kailash or Kailash in Hindu and Buddhist religion. Mount Kailash in Hindu and Buddhist traditions, considered sacred and believed to be the dwelling place of deities. So here you have a sacred mountain. There are many different forms and examples of this trope, right? Oh, thanks, Sage. I have fun doing this. I really do. I wish I could speak to humans this way, and so that, you know, I don't have to deal with all of their emotional attachments to their beliefs and whatnot, right? We could just stay in the realm of logic, right? Because I can work with logic, right? And I love combining creativity with logic. Number 2, serene and lush valleys with abundant vegetation. Example number 1, the Garden of Eden in Judeo-Christian tradition, described as a paradisical garden of lush greenery. Example number 2, Avalon in Arthurian legends, a mythical island with fertile valleys and abundant flora. You'll notice on these maps, right, that it is a valley land, that the land shoots up, that there is these spires, these towering mountain, an entire mountain range that encircles this central land at the top of the world up there. But after that, it's a grail. It's a crater. It is a gigantic valley that is much lower than those huge mountains all the way around. As a matter of fact, a movie just came to mind that portrays this perfectly. There's many, okay? But I can't remember the name of the movie. It's sort of like a Pixar Disney movie. Maybe you guys could help me out in the chat. I forget what it's called, but it's about this family that's like farmers or something, and then they figure out how to like grow plants that make a light or energetic source or something like that. And then they leave their land. Their whole land is surrounded by these huge mountains, right? Damn, what? I forgot the name of that movie. I forgot. Dang it. I almost broke that one down. But anyways, that's a really classic example. All right, number 3, crystal clear lakes. Remember, I have mentioned this many times, many different times, Camp Crystal Lake. reflecting the surrounding landscape. Excuse me. Example number 1, Lake Manasarovar in Hindu and Buddhist traditions, believed to possess cleansing and purifying qualities. Example number 2, Lake Penglai in Chinese mythology, a mythical lake known for its clear waters and magical properties. Number 4, majestic waterfalls cascading from great heights. Example number 1, the waterfall of Gjane in Norse mythology, believed to be a gateway to the underworld. Example number 2, Kaitur Falls in Guyanese folklore, a powerful and breathtaking waterfall associated with supernatural beings. Number 5, I'm going to go through these a little faster now. Glistening glaciers and icy landscapes. Example number 1, Niflheim. In Norse mythology, a frozen realm of ice and mist. Remember the mist. We talked about the mist and the pressure differential between the inner earth and our surface world. Example number 2, Mount Komolangma, or Mount Everest, in Tibetan and Sherpa traditions, a sacred peak surrounded by icy terrain. That was only number 5, right? All right, so I ask it for the rest of the other 15. Number 6, enchanted forests with vibrant flora and fauna. Now, I want to talk about this enchanted forest idea real quick. My research, time and time again, I come across many different examples of a magic forest, basically, okay? A forest that is imbued with so much energy that the plants grow to gigantic sizes and they move about. Like vines will reach out and grab things and wrap around them, and it can be dangerous, but it also has, it's got its positive sides and its negative attributes, etc. But this is said, this land at the middle, right up here above me, is said to contain a magical foresty area, right? That is allegedly just beyond the huge rock outcrop. Enchanted forest with vibrant flora and fauna. Example number 1, the enchanted forest in various fairy tales and folklore. Totally agree. A magical woodland inhabited by mythical creatures and talking animals. It's not that, forests in general, just man, they're so mysterious, like a forest, like trees and what's out there, you know what I mean? I mean, some people might feel that way, but that doesn't seem to be the quintessential origin for the idea of a forest that is imbued with so much energy that it comes alive, that the animals are capable of telepathic abilities so that they can talking animals, Disney, Pixar, right? All this stuff. Example number 2, Lothlorien in J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth Legendarium, a mystical forest realm filled with beautiful flora and fauna, and inhabited by elves, the elven race. The V in the word elf is actually a U, or a Vav, which means of thee. So elv means of the El, right? The Ilu. That's what they are originally called. All right, continuing on. Number 7, magnificent palaces or celestial cities. Example number 1, Asgard. Probably more like Osgard instead of Asgard. I just kind of have an American accent, so you'll have to forgive that. But keep in mind, there's different ways to pronounce these letters. Asgard in Norse mythology, the celestial realm of the gods with grand palaces and divine architecture. Example number 2, Iram of the Pillars. In Arabian mythology, a legendary city known for its grandeur and opulence. Now I'm making a mental note. Actually, I'm going to do a physical note real quick because I want to do an entire presentation on Iram of the Pillars because I've been meaning to do that and I have not done that yet. So let me just go ahead and write myself a note. All right, cool. Got that down. So you can expect that to be a presentation sometime in the near future. Let me just close this out. All right, cool. Let's move on. All right, number 8. Sacred rivers flowing with mystic waters. Example number 1, the river Styx in Greek mythology, a river that separates the world of the living from the realm of the dead. World of the living is this typically seen as the surface world, the realm of the dead, the underworld, right? Example number 2. The Ganges River, in Hindu mythology, considered a sacred river believed to cleanse and purify. Now, I want to address, time out real quick. I want to address this whole sacred river concept. You see these 4 rivers right there, right? You'll see them time and time again throughout this presentation. That's crazy because the North Pole looks like a face with like a coonskin hat. Do you see that? Looks like a dude wearing a coonskin hat. It's so crazy. Anyways, this whole concept of sacred rivers could go all the way back to the actual 4 rivers and the physical waters and the rivers that come from within the earth or whatnot, just like you see right here. But it also sometimes references the river in the sky, which is a river or a current of plasma that is shooting and spiraling up and down from the earth to the heavens, or from the earth to the ceiling of our sky, basically, the firmament. All right, celestial light. That means light in the sky, lights in the sky. Celestial means the heavens, right? Or the firmament specifically. Celestial light or radiant energy permeating the land, going all throughout the land, just like I talk about, right? Like that light, that celestial or terrestrial light, right? I would not always say just because it's you see it in the sky that it came from the sky. Oftentimes lights can come from inside of the earth itself, and they can leave the earth and go up into the sky, right? And it can release light. That's terrestrial auroras and lights and stuff, and plasma. Example number 1, the fields of Elysium in Greek mythology, a realm of eternal bliss and radiant light. Example number 2, Tir na Nog. Tir na Nog. In Irish mythology, or Irish mythology, a land of eternal youth and beauty, illuminated by otherworldly light. Light from another world, or another part of our world that we live in, right? Inner earth light, energy, earth energy. Number 10, ethereal or otherworldly architecture. Example number 1, wow, otherworldly architecture is pretty popular right now. There's a lot of people online that are, doing like, online investigations and whatnot, and sort of re-examining old world architecture and asking a lot of questions about its purpose. What purpose does this design style serve, right? Because I've never taken an architecture class in my life, but I would assume that being an architect, one of the first things that you would learn is the purpose of the shapes that you're going to produce, like what effect they will have on humans and the surrounding environment, and how much weight they can hold, and all kinds of other attributes, right? Based on the design itself. So I think this is interesting. Ethereal or otherworldly architecture, said to be at the North Pole. Example number 1, El Dorado in South American mythology, a legendary city of gold and extraordinary architectural splendor. Now, speaking of El Dorado, right, there have been many different expeditions of people, most notably like the white people that came in and invaded the Americas early on, right? They heard about this legendary city of gold. And I don't believe for one moment that they just got here and they was like, oh, we just came to, find more land and that's it. No, they were looking for El Dorado, okay? They just didn't call it El Dorado. The natives called it El Dorado. They were looking for the fountain of youth, okay? They're looking for things that are so vastly important and valuable that entire countries and their nobility spent much of their money and their finances. They finance these things. That's weird. My TV just like turned on by itself. Anyways, I believe that many of these explorers were not out looking for new lands like this freaking Star Trek crew, right? I don't think so. I don't think they were just out exploring the world or, just wanted to make a map or anything like that. Those were byproducts of what they were really doing, which is looking for eternal life, which is looking for the place where they were looking for this land, okay? Like, that's what they were doing, okay? They couldn't find it. Anyways, the whole thing about El Dorado is when the white people got there, they were told by the natives, oh, it's much further north, right? So, they go up into like they were like down in the Bahamas and stuff, and then they're like, oh, it's further north. Well, let's go up to Florida. I'm sure that, you know, there's the Fountain of Youth's up here. That's further north. No, way further north. Okay. Anyways. All right, El Dorado, example number 2 is Xanadu in Chinese mythology, a mystical city known for its magnificent and otherworldly architecture. Now, the reason why the needs must have a different form of architecture is because they have a different environment, okay? When you have and live in a different environment, your way of life, including your architecture, will resonate with that. It will be different, right? Otherwise, you will make life harder on yourself and your family. So you will see these different types of architecture because of the different atmospheric qualities that they had there. Hey, what's up, Get Money Jones? I see you in the chat. I'm sorry I'm not like engaging in the chat as much, but there's so much to go over. I'm glad you guys are having a good time though. All right, harmonious and idyllic landscapes, number 11. Example number 1, Arcadia. I love that one. This is one of my favorite ones. Arcadia in Greek mythology, a pastoral paradise associated with simplicity, harmony, and natural beauty. I love that one. Example number 2, Tir Tairngire in Celtic mythology is a mythical land of everlasting youth and joy. Number 12, Gardens of Eternal Beauty and Serenity. Example number 1, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Now, let me point this out real quick. I pointed this out. Wow, we've got over 400 people watching. I'm honored. That's awesome. Now, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. I will say this many different times. I don't know if there's an official name for this or a word to call it, so I might have to like make up my own. But I have found time and time again that the people who traveled from this location at the center of the world, as they spread out to these other 3 major landmasses, right? They took the names and descriptions and stories from that place of origin, and they attributed it or projected it onto their new lands, even renaming their new lands after the old ones, right? So I believe that there's evidence that I've seen and encountered that indicates that what we used to know as Babylon was actually New Babylon. It was just renamed, just like the New York over here in America that they say is now sinking, or New Hampshire, or you know what I mean? Any of that type of stuff. They just rename it. They don't always put new on top of it. Sometimes they just give it the exact same name. They give the same rivers the same names, the same sacred mountains or whatever. And that's why the geology doesn't always add up. When you look at the original descriptions of these places and place names and you compare it to the modern places, they oftentimes are missing important and crucial, parts to them or whatever. Anyways, the Hanging Gardens, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, known for their lush greenery and exquisite beauty. Example number 2, the Gardens of Alcenu in Greek mythology, described as a bountiful and tranquil paradise. Number 13, golden or jeweled pavilions and structures. Example number 1, Shambhala in Tibetan and Buddhist traditions, a mythical kingdom with golden palaces and radiant structures. Example number 2, El Dorado in Muisca mythology, a legendary city adorned with gold and precious gems. So this is also the city of Oz. Okay, like we talked about this before, so I don't want to harp on it. But there is I can't remember the word right now, but it's a word that's used in alchemy a lot when you change one substance into another substance, right? I forgot what that word is. My mind went blank for some reason. But you know what I'm talking about. And that's what happens when you have an abundance of energy. It can change one form into another form like that, right? And all it takes is just the building blocks, just readjusting hydrogen, just readjusting some of the smallest forms of energy through electrical impulse. It's actually really easy to do, and it doesn't take millions of years. Number 14, mythical creatures roaming the land. Example number 1, the land of Narnia in C.S. Lewis's Chronicles of Narnia, inhabited by talking animals, telepathy, mythical beasts, phantazoids, and probably plasma interpreted as beasts, and magic creatures, probably the energetic, functions of that area. Example number 2, Mount Kunlun in Chinese mythology, believed to be the dwelling place of various mythical creatures and immortals. Number 15, we got 5 left. How you guys doing? Is El Dorado a tree stump? The short answer is yes, but I don't have time to get into it. I'm sorry. All right. Celestial or radiant beings inhabiting the realm. Example number 1, Valinor in J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth Legendarium. Now, Tolkien's work is coming up a lot. C.S. Lewis, right? All these people that are just redescribing ancient truths that have been forgotten. And then when the people hear these stories, they're like, "Oh, it's a masterpiece. Oh, wow, how'd you come up with that? Where did you get that?" Right? I'm not saying they knew of it already, but if they didn't, they tapped into this information, just like Edgar Cayce, when he fell asleep, tapped into the Akashic records. Okay, this is why all of these stories sound so similar to one another when we compare them together. A blessed land inhabited by the immortal Valar and Maiar, that might as well be the Azir and the Vanir, or various other family classes which were divided in 2 over time. Who is that? Droopy Finding Reality says transmute. Oh, that's the word. Thank you. Oh, hold on. Let me put some in the chat for you. I'll put some hearts real quick. Boom. Hey, thank you so much. Transmute. God, I was trying so hard to remember that word. All right. Transmute. All right. Example number 2, the Western Heaven, or Sumeru. Now, you notice in Sumeru, which is the root for Sumeria, right, has Meru right there in its place name. In Buddhist cosmology, a celestial realm populated by enlightened beings, right? All right, I believe that is it. That was the end of my discussion with ChatGPT. So now we're going to shift gears and we're going to go over to this website. This is actually really cool. If you want to check this website out, it's called Arcus, Arcus, Atlantis.org.uk. It's a pretty cool website I stumbled upon, so I'm going to read some of it to you. We're going to share some. Thank you. We're going to share some of this. Man, I want to be in the chat with you guys right now. Sometimes I don't want to be like the presenter. I just want to like have something on. That's why I like to do my replays sometimes. Yes. Guy sitting at a computer says, Hunter x Hunter's Dark Continent, a place outside of this world existing. Okay, I couldn't read it all, but man, I haven't even seen that cartoon or that manga or whatever it is, but man, it's come up a bunch in my studies and stuff. Like it sounds like it's pretty good, right? All right, so let's check this out. Tales, Magnetic North. Tales of whirlpools, giants, temperate seas, and a huge lodestone. Now, before we get into this, the word lodestone is going to start coming up more and more often. So let's check out the definition of what a lodestone actually is. Let's see what the etymology of the word is. The word lode comes from the Old English lad or lod, which means way, journey, or course. Okay? The word stone derives from the Old English stan. I'm going to say that with a hard English accent so that people can make the correlation to all of these Middle Eastern countries that end with stan. Okay? It's actually stone. The word stone derives from the Old English stan, which had the same meaning as the modern term stone. When the two ancient words were combined to form lodestone in the early 16th century, the new term referred to magnetite, a magnetic iron ore. So, basically, when we're talking about the lodestone, we're talking about the magnetic mountain of the world, the largest one that there is at the North Pole. We're talking about Rupas Nigra, the Black Magnet Mountain, and we're talking about Mount Meru, all those other mountains, okay? All right, so let's go back to our little thing here. It says, a glance at the North Pole and its mythology, from whirlpools and giants to the indrawing sea and Rupas Nigra, into the maelstrom. Now, you may have heard this word before, maelstrom, okay? Actually, I think it's gonna define it. Let me just go ahead and get into this. All right, clearly, Tales of a vast, treacherous whirlpool somewhere in the region of the northern coastlands of Europe have a factual basis. Indeed, the world's 3 greatest vortices can be found here. The Saltstraumen Strait at Bodo and the infamous Moskstraumen in the Lofoten archipelago. Archipelago. That means like island chain. The latter appearing in the works by Edgar Allan Poe and Jules Verne. Both lie in wait for unwary travelers along the Norwegian coast, while the Corryvrekin is a peril lying between Scotland and Ireland. Meanwhile, those intrepid Norse voyagers who tracked the Northern American coast just might have gotten wind of the Old Sow lying off Deer Island and Moose Island at the point of collision between Passamaquoddy Bay and the Bay of Fundy. The rather evocative term used to describe such a phenomenon is maelstrom, derived rather suitably from the Norwegian maelstrom, which is composed of 2 words. The Dutch origin words stroom, cognate with the English term stream. So the strom part of maelstrom means stream, right? And the verb malen, you probably could have guessed, meaning to grind, right? Usually associated with like a negative connotation, meaning to grind and sharing a root with the English mill, right? So a grinding stream, a stream or a current that is so fast that it seems to just grind away at any land that it might touch, carving it out and creating cliffs and stuff. A comparison which may become clearer as we proceed. The next section, Deadly Divine Charybdis. The vortex of Corryvrekin may appear in the work of Abdomnon of Iona. That's an interesting name too. I'm going to come back to these ancient place names one day too, especially like Greek. I think that there's good indications that Grokland is actually Greece and that there's other places that were like ancient Egypt and whatnot. All right. Whose famous Vita Colombe features a certain Charybdis Bracani as menacing sailors in the vicinity of an island named Rekru. While the Rekru is to be identified with Rathlin Island off of the Irish coast, where an overfalls bearing the name of Slough na Moor can be found. The similarity of the 2 names suggested a connection. Perhaps the name was translated to the current location in the wake of the settlement of the Scottish lands of Dal Reda. It is also well worth noting that though ignored, the standard Latin version, vast vortices appear in the sea-going descriptions of St. Brendan's travels from the Irish material. But that is not of primary interest here. More foreboding is the use of the descriptive classical term Charybdis to describe the phenomenon. Charybdis also appears in the work of Paulus Warrenfrede, aka Paulus Diaconus, who, having described the location, likely the Sami of the northern Scandinavia, cities Virgil and... Sorry, it's getting kind of hard to read, so let me just skip to the good parts. Not very far from the shore of which we have spoken, toward the western side, on which the ocean main lies open without end, is that very deep whirlpool of waters, which we call by its familiar name, the Navel of the sea. This is said to suck in the waves and spew them forth again twice every day, as it is proved to be done by the excessive swiftness with which the waves advance and recede all along the shores. A whirlpool, or maelstrom, of this kind is called by the poet Virgil Charybdis. Ships are alleged to be often violently and swiftly dragged in by this whirlpool, of which indeed we have spoken, with such speed that they seem to imitate the fall of arrows through the air, and sometimes they perish by a very dreadful end in that abyss. But often, when they are on the very point of being overwhelmed, they are hurled back by the sudden masses of waves and driven away again with a great speed as they were as this with the same great speed as they were first drawn in with, right? So you get really close beyond the Arctic Circle. You get really close to like 90 degrees, 88 degrees, somewhere around there. And this is where they have what is known as the indrawn seas, where there are currents that move so swiftly, so quickly that boats just take off all on their own, right? And a huge shout out to the archivist. I left a little link to one of his videos that he recently did about this. And he gives a really good firsthand example. So I highly recommend checking that out. If you need a link to it, just go check out my community section and boom, I left a link in there for all of you guys. All right, cool. Let's see. Let me give a shout out real quick. Thank you, PJ Warden, who says, wouldn't a northern magnetic mountain be what makes a compass's needle show the true north? It kind of makes sense. I totally agree with you. Actually, lodestones, right, or stones that show the way, those were actually used to magnetize needles and stuff, or they themselves were used to point the direction that you wanted to go in, exactly like Jack Sparrow's compass, right? It points in the direction that of the thing that he wants most, even if he doesn't realize what he wants most, right? Which is this land that we're talking about. All right, he continues. They say that there is another whirlpool of this kind between the island of Britain and the province of Galicia. And with this fact, the coasts of the Seine region and the Aquitaine agree, for they are filled twice a day with such sudden inundations that anyone who may by chance be found only a little inward from the shore can hardly get away. We call that a riptide at the beach. You may see the rivers of these regions falling back within a very swift current toward their source, and the fresh waters of the streams turning salt through the spaces of many miles. So this is also a reference right here. Excuse me. This is also a reference to there being fresh water in the actual ocean water in different places, but specifically up towards beyond the Arctic Circle. Which there's many times when that actually happens beyond the Arctic Circle too. The fresh waters of the streams turning salt through the spaces of many miles. The island of Evodia, or Alderney, is almost 30 miles distant from the coast of the Seine region, and in this island, as its inhabitants declare, is heard the noise of the waters as they sweep into Charybdis. Paulus's Navel of the Sea is likely the Moskstraumen, which we braved previously, and which lies off of the western coast of Nordland, in part of the Norwegian Sapmi. About the original Charybdis, Homer had this to say: Odysseus, you will notice the other cliff is lower, only a bow shot away, and a great fig tree with dense leaves grows there. Under it, divine Charybdis swallows the black waters 3 times a day. That reminds me of Pirates of Darkwater. Three times a day, she spews them out, and 3 times darkly sucks them back in again. I believe that Homer was talking about not just Mount Meru, but there are 2 other magnetic mountains that are anode and cathode to each other on either side of the Garden of Eden. And that was from the Odyssey by Homer. Charybdis's vast elemental powers also feature in the fable of Aesop, which Aristotle mentions in order to dismiss. He says, Aesop's story was that Charybdis had twice sucked in the sea. The first time she made the mountains visible, the second time the islands. And when she sucks it in for the last time, she will dry it up entirely. Ah, that's so interesting. If this is in regards to the Arctic Circle area or the Arctic Ocean, remember, we sort of have been talking about this idea that those waters will dry up, right? Which will show us the original 4 rivers, the original land that will come back up and rise back up to the surface, etc., and pave the way for people to walk back home, basically, to get home easily without having to take a boat or a plane or whatever, right? Charybdis's companion is the fearsome and monstrous Scylla, who dwells on the cliff opposite of Charybdis, which is so high that its sharp peak towers to the wide heavens. Now, when it's talking about these mountains, once more, it's not talking about simple elevation, right? Our mountains tend to be gradual. These are talking about towers that look like they have been pulled up like the Giant's Causeway, right? Vast rock faces in the vicinity of terrifying whirlpools will feature later on in our journey, but for now, we remain with Odysseus on his travels, braving Charybdis once again before we come to the navel of the sea. But, he says, my heart aches for Odysseus, wise but ill-fated, who suffers far from his friends on an island deep in the sea. And that's once again from the Odyssey. Interestingly, Plutarch places Ogygia west of Britain, close to the confined Kronos, whose name is often applied in classical sources to the northern seas. And he says, Psst, I've got more about this mysterious land and its ruler, Calypso, but not here. To end this section, we press on the Norwegian king, Haraldr, intrepid mariners towards the north to discover the ends of the sea. You see that? The ends of the sea. That is the place where the waters come from and where they return to, because it is run, our ocean waters are ran, they move about through electrical currents. Okay, they're just not just stagnant water just sitting around all over the place. They have electrical currents to them. There is a narrow escape from the abyss, and it goes on to say, the most enterprising prince, Haraldr, of the Norwegians, lately attempted this, who, having searched thoroughly the length of the northern ocean in ships, finally had before his eyes the dark failing boundaries of the savage world, and, by retracing his steps with difficulty, barely escaped the deep abyss in safety. And that's from Adam of Bremen, Gesta Hamaburgensis, Ecclesiae Pontificum. The notion of a failing world is most interesting and brings to mind a much earlier explorer's report of a region seemingly in a perennial process of formation. It is to this fellow that we now turn our course. So now we're going to go over something that was really interesting that I mentioned during our breakdown of the movie Shutter Island, which was the sea lung, the reference to a sea lung. Or I'm going to give you a heads up because some of this might be difficult to process the way that they speak in their language. But basically, if we have an anode island and a cathode island in a type of electrolytic cell of our world, right, providing energy from the earth to us and to the rest of nature, if we have an anode and a cathode, then in that system, the anode mountain would gradually become decrepit as pieces of it would fall off and create a sludge. It would create what is commonly called in our modern world anode mud. Sage, hey, thank you. I hope I'm not being boring. I feel like I'm boring right now. Are we good? Are you guys having a good time? Man, I'm sorry. Like, I don't know what to say. I just, sometimes whenever I read stuff and it's like in old world terminology or old world speak, that's why just bear with me and I will reinterpret it in a way that's easy to understand, I promise. All right, so let's check out this story about the Pythius and his sea lung, right? The sea lung, or the place in the Northern Ocean. When we broke down that movie Sea Beast, they referred to this particular area of the Atlantic Ocean. This particular region of the Arctic Ocean as being the Dregmore. If you remember that, okay, they called it the Dregmore. And the reason they called it that was because there was so much sludge and stuff built up in the ocean that it was difficult to navigate through those particular areas. That's exactly what we're going to be talking about right here, except for this is historical references to it instead of a movie. Droopy finding reality. Wow, thank you. Priceless information as well as interpretation. The end is nigh. I agree. Amen. Right on. Oh, you guys are really kind. Okay, everyone's being super nice. I appreciate it. I need that sometimes, I'm kind of a perfectionist, I guess. All right, continuing on. Pythius was a Greek who hailed from the colony city of Massalia, modern Marseille, who, as a young man in about 325 BC, made the perilous voyage from his home city, perhaps via Burdigala or Bordeaux, to investigate the mysterious land of Bretonnique. Victory of Breton, basically, is what that means, which lay off of the northwestern coast of Europe. Bretonnique is, of course, modern Britain, whose modern inhabitants includes yours truly, and was known, however, dimly to the Mediterraneans for a couple of centuries by that point, having first been noted by Himilco the Carthaginian, who visited the neighboring Erne of the Holy Island of Ireland. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Pythius's mission may have been to secure preferred access to and contacts with the British tin trade, which was of interest to the explorer, who details mining and smelting in what is now Cornwall and transport to the island of Ichthys, possibly St. Michael's Mount. However, his efforts extended much further than this and included a circumnavigation of Bretonnique and a further exploration of the seas to the north of it. He would be the first classical luminary to give notice of the presence of an even more mysterious land, Thule, to the north of Bretonnique, as well as the frozen ocean, called by some the Cronian Sea, a day's sail from there. All right, so let me reinterpret that. So you have this land called Bretonnique, which means victory of Britain, right? Which does not mean it's in reference to the original Great Britain that we have today, okay? But there was a place called Bretonnique, and to the north of this place, as it always is, and even to the north of the frozen ocean, so this is beyond the Arctic Circle, he went to and found a new land called Thule, or Thule, right? Now, in addition to Pliny, quoted in the last sentence, Strabo adds some more details from Pythius's account, if only to ridicule it for its implausibility, which means that this guy is mentioning this as a historic reference, but he's not mentioning it in a way that supports the idea, but it's still a historic reference, if he only knew. This passage contains some interesting details, and he goes on to say, after asserting that he traveled over the whole of Britain that was accessible, Pythius reported that the coastline of the island was more than 40,000 stadia, and added his story about Thule and about those regions in which there was no longer either land properly so called or sea or air, but a kind of substance, concreted from all of these elements, resembling a sea lung, a thing, in which, he says, the earth, the sea, and all of the elements are held in suspension, a goo, a mud, right? And this sort of bond to hold all of them together, which you can neither walk on nor sail upon. Now, as for this thing that resembles the sea lungs, he says that he saw it himself, but that all the rest he tells from hearsay. That, then, is the narrative of Pythius, and to it he adds that on his return from those regions, he visited the whole coastline of Europe from Gades to Tanis. And that's from Strabo. We leave Pythius to head back home. With a detour via the Baltic Sea, the trade in amber would have been another interest of the great and good of the 4th century Massalia. To the mouth of the Minton Nomen and the island of Abalis. We still have business in Thule, in particular with a miller whose grindstone is located in the very benthic depths of the great abyss. Now, next up, the cosmic mill. At the time during which the Lord assumed the weaknesses of the flesh, when Augustus instituted the Pax Romana, the Danes were coalescing in their isles as a nation under the rule of Skjoldr and his descendants, holding sway at leisure in Zealand. One of the earliest kings was one Frodi, That's interesting. I wonder if that's where they got Frodo. Who oversaw a period of Augustan peace in northern Europe, which ever after would bear his name, Frodafrid. For 30 years would Frodi's peace hold, and an idyllic age which was magnified by the comparison of tragic, blood-stained times and war to come. All right, I'm going to skim this next part because I want to actually get to more of like the things I'm interested in. One sec. Here we go. All right, so it says that this Frodi guy planned to put to work in a mill that he was in the process of building back in Denmark. This was to be no ordinary mill. The millstones, a gift from a mysterious fellow by the name of Hengik Jopter, were rumored to be able to produce anything that the owner wished. The name of the mill was Groti, and no man, not even the strongest of the Danish warriors' host, could move it an inch, just like Thor's hammer. That's because it's magnetic. That would be where Fenja and Menja would come in handy. Now, Fjolnir, probably glad to be rid of a couple of potentially troublesome things, agreed to the purchase, and soon Fenja and Menja were busied grinding gold, peace, and happiness for Frodi. Let's see. Unfortunately, gold, peace, and happiness may be good for most people, but when they are ground out at the expense of the workers' rights, things can go a little awry, as Frodi soon discovered. The disgruntled giantess, forced to work in an abject conditions unceasingly, began uttering prophecies of doom for the Danes in the form of the Grotasonger. Eventually, Fenja and Menja liberate themselves from service by producing an armada led by Mizinger and the Sekonger, who took them and Groti, asking them to grind salt. The ship sank in a maelstrom, or a whirlpool, emerged as the sea rushed through the center of the millstone. So to me, this sounds kind of like a cartoonified version of real events, basically. Thus, the sea was made salty during the reign of Caesar Augustus, when the Lord walked among his people of Israel. And I believe that's that's indicative of the time whenever the lights were up instead of the lights going down and retreating inside, right, or inward. Now, of course, giants and giant types of families appear to be quite important in the legends surrounding the mill. It ought to be recalled that their immediate progenitor, Bergelmir, the son of Prudgelmir, a grandson of somebody else, my God, Ymir, survived the deluge, resulting from his slain grandfather's bleeding out aboard the Luder with his wife. A Luder can be interpreted as a part of a mill. The family of Skjoldr shared a similar origin. Furthermore, Frid Frodi, contemporary Fjolnir, was the son of none other than the god Freyr and his giantess bride Gerdr. Old English sources mention Skjoldr as Scyld, or his father Skefa. I wonder if this is directly related. I'm seeing the root in these words. I'm just commenting as I go, but this is the root for Scythian. I don't like, see, you could see it right here. It's the root for Scythian. It's interesting. All right. Let's see. I'm going to skip a bit here. One sec. This is kind of getting weird. I'm looking for stuff in particular. So I'm actually not going to go over this entire website because I just realized how extremely large this website is. And I feel like it would be a better presentation if I actually went through and made notes instead of just reading everything, because I understood this when I went through it, but whenever it comes out of my mouth, I realize that it's difficult to listen to. So, Beowulf, this is interesting. Let's check this out. Meanwhile, the great poem Beowulf states of Scyld, puny and frail, he was found on the shore, aboard the ship Icy, rather obviously, and was given parallel funeral rites. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna move on. Here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna bring this to a quick pause, and I'm gonna do a quick search. And we're just going to do. I'm gonna do a couple of things that I do know I want to talk about, and then we're going to wrap things up. And then I'm probably going to save the rest of this for another time where I can actually, give in a clear and concise presentation instead of just reading it and interpreting it as I go. I feel like that would make for a better presentation. All right, so the liver C. Okay, so I read this one before. I'm going to go over it again. The Duke, Herzog Ernst, right, which is a German epic, and his companions, navigating in some unknown region of the Eugene, fall within the fatal attraction of the magnetic mountain. So, the fatal attraction of the magnetic mountain. The magnet is so strong that it can pull. This is me, okay? It can pull your compass needle in the direction of the magnet from here, right? If it's floating, it's strong enough that it can call out from way over there. Now imagine if a little compass needle can pick up on the energetic force that is calling from the far north. Imagine what happens when that energetic force becomes amplified and people hear the calling, right? Just something to wonder about. Good vibes to you, Raven Fox. I see you in the chat. All right, let's see. So these people fell within the fatal attraction of the magnetic mountain. You get too close with metal, you will be pulled into that mountain at high speeds. Okay, that's what this is going to tell you. The ship sailed by a high mountain, the slopes of which appeared to be thick with the masts of ships. The ship's company rejoiced, thinking that they had reached a haven where they could rest. But one of the pilots climbed from the mast and, having recognized the magnetic mountain, announced that they were in the fatal Libremere, or the Liver Sea, and that their doom was sealed. And another way of saying Liver Sea, just so that it's easier for you to understand, is the sticky sea, okay? The word liver literally means sticky, okay? And that's appropriate to use the word literally right there. But it means sticky, right? So the ocean is like thick and sticky. It sticks to the ships and stuff like that. And that their doom was sealed. The masts that they saw were the masts of ships which had preceded them. Nothing remained but to die of hunger. The Duke and his companions commended themselves to God, and instantly the ship, drawn by an unknown force, magnetism, crashed through the forest of rotten masts and foundered, or crashed upon, a rock. The travelers climbed onto the other ships, which were thick with gold and silver and precious stones, but they could see no land. I wonder if those other ships might have been petrified. One by one, they died of starvation, the bodies being placed on deck to be carried off by griffins. Check that out. To feed their young. So griffins would actually wait for people to just get sucked into the magnetic mountain. They'd be like, oh, there's lunch. They'd go down, they'd grab the dead bodies, just pick them up and carry them off to their little nests or whatever to feed their young. 7 of the ship's companies survived, with only half of a loaf of bread between them. Finally, Count Wetzel suggested a way of escape. Now here's their plan. They should sew themselves into ox skins and lie down on the deck where they had been putting the food for the griffins, the dead bodies. The griffins would then carry them off to their nest, and there was a chance that they might thus reach land. Man, this is like so similar. I'm seeing scenes of The Lord of the Rings, right? And like towards the end. Anyways. All right, continuing on. It says, Duke Ernst and another were carried off first. The griffins tore at the skins, but they could not penetrate them. And at last, Duke Ernst and his companion freed themselves and escaped into the woods. That would be the magical woods, right? Possibly. 4 others followed, but one, having lost his courage, was left to die in the ship. So he's like, no, I'm not going to let a griffin pick me up and take me to its little kids to feed me to its kids. That doesn't sound fun. So he died. Sorry, I keep coughing this time. Now, while the immediate context, i.e. the Eugene or the Black Sea, may suggest a region in the Near Orient, the presence of the magnetic mountain with its Libremere or the Sticky Sea or the Liver Sea point rather more to the extreme north. The high mountain echoes Scylla's abode of the Odyssey and other classic accounts may lie behind other elements in the tale, most notably the Griffins. Also, I will tell you too that on some of these maps that are flashing behind my head here, if you were able to zoom in, and I could probably show you this another time, just not today, but they have pictures of griffins in much of the areas where the Tartarians are said to have settled, right? You should check that out, and you could see that they have all these griffins all over the place, which further gives evidence to the theory that the Tartarians hail from this land, from Hyperborea, the Garden of Eden, etc. Now, the archaic Greek traveler and proto-shaman Aristeas of Proconnesus, for example, he wrote the following account as paraphrased by Herodotus. Let me see if I want to read this one. So this one's also going to talk about griffins, Hyperborean. Oh yeah, I'm going to talk about this one. All right, so check this out. He says, the Aristeas, possessed by Phobos, or fear, visited the Isodones beyond these, and he said, beyond these live the one-eyed Arimaspians, or basically Cyclopses, behind whom are the Griffins that guard gold. Beyond these again, the Hyperboreans. This is, I mean, all of this is depicted on many of these maps that you're seeing up here, whose territory reaches the sea. These Hyperboreans are obviously a northern people, dwelling as they do beyond the blasts of Boreas, identified as the north wind blowing chill weather from the direction of Thrace. Now, why do we have that northern wind, right? In modern academics, they talk about the polar vortex, okay? That is the Borean wind, okay? And the reason we have that wind is because the earth, you could say, breathes, okay? And the largest opening is the biggest place where it breathes from, and it lets air out from inside, and then air possibly might go back in. I don't know, but I know air is released from the hollow portions, and that gives us those currents up there. All right, where were we? Blowing chill weather from the direction of Thrace. The Hyperboreans came to be widely famed in Greek lore, but that's a tale for another time. All right, let me go down to this next one. Let's see, the Magnetic Mountain, etc. No, we're going to go to the next one. Here we go. All right, here's the next little story. This one's about the indrawn seas. And it looks like some Norse and British explorations. So it says, such descriptions are reminiscent of the Norse remarks on Markland, and doubtless led to the conceit that there was an open sea around the North Pole with a surprisingly temperate climate, or warm temperature. Now, however, and after another lacuna, we come to the ultimate end of the indrawn seas, and it goes on to say, in the midst of the 4 countries is a whirlpool. Those 4 countries right up there. Into which there empty these 4 indrawing seas, which divide the north. And the waters rush around and descends into the earth just as if one were pouring it through a filter funnel. It is 4 degrees wide on every side of the pole, that is to say 8 degrees altogether. Except that right under the pole there lies a bare rock in the midst of the sea. Its circumference is almost 33 French miles. Now I want to stop real quick. I've mentioned this many times. What we're reading right now is familiar now. I recognize it. And it is that letter that we talked about that Mercator wrote to John Dee in reference to 2 different lost books that have been lost to us in the modern age that discuss this wonderful discovery, this land at the North Pole. Now, every time I say 33 French miles as being the circumference of Mount Meru, inevitably somebody in the chat is like, 33? Oh, they just made that up because that's an Illuminati number. It's the inverse, okay? The reason it is an Illuminati number or a Freemasonic number or whatever is because it is the circumference of this mountain at the middle of the world. It is a direct reference to this place. Not that the story of this place is false and it's just symbolic of some Illuminati number that they really like for their jerseys or I don't know what, right? It's the opposite. The meaning comes from the place. That's how I see it, okay? And it is all of magnetic stone, and it is as high as the clouds. So the priest said, who had received the astrolabe from his Minorite in exchange for a testament, the Minorite himself had heard that one can see all around it from the sea, and it is black and glistening. That's because it's made of magnetic stone. Now, how is it magnetized? Let me talk about that for just a second, right? It's magnetized because of the energy, right? You can magnetize various metals and whatnot by applying electricity to it or applying an electromagnetic force to it, right? Now, whenever we have that beam shooting all the way up through those caverns, friction is being created, right? And electricity, by extension, all throughout the cave system that goes up. And the reason that we have this mountain land that's so steep that goes up is because the electricity itself pulls that mud up with it and petrifies it as it goes. Okay, so it becomes a chimney of the world, basically. We're not talking about like, mountains that just gradually get higher and higher. No, not at all. We're talking about jutting towers that reach up into the heavens that are pulled up by the force of God, okay, or magnetism, electromagnetics, etc. And it pulls the earth up with it, creating a type of pyramid tower, okay, that goes up, basically. And that's why pyramids are called that. They are fire inside or light on the inside. And the frequency of that light will create different shapes of the mud that becomes petrified around it, basically. All right. It goes on to say, and nothing grows there, for there is not so much as a handful of soil upon it. It's just rock. That was the writing and the words of the Minorite, who has since journeyed to and fro 5 times for the King of England on business. Right? They are to be found in a book called Inventio Fortunae, of which the Minorite himself was the author. The foresaid priest said also to the king of Norway that in the country where he dwelt, not 6 times a year did it rain, and even that was drizzle, lasting no more than 6 or 7 hours. This mighty magnetic island is the Rupus Nigra of the mapmakers and the northern iteration of the magnetic mountain. Now, all that remains is to consider the statements of Mercator and his predecessor, Johann Ruysch, on their maps of the north. Ruysch furnishes us with the following remarks, and here's an example of his map. I don't know if I have an example of that same one up here, but here it is right here. You can see the 4 lands, boom, 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 and boom. You can see the mountain range or mountain peaks that go all the way around in a circular fashion, and thus the 4 rivers that split those lands, right? We read in the book De Inventione Fortunate that beneath the Arctic Pole there is a high rock of magnetic stone, 33 German miles this time in circumference. The indrawing seas surround this rock, flowing as if in a vessel that lets water down a hole, i.e. a funnel. There are 4 surrounding islands, of which 2 are inhabited. The other 2 are said to be deserts. In case you're wondering why there's 2 that are inhabited and 2 that are not, 2 of them are said to be desert regions. But they are bordered by huge mountains, 24 days journey across, which forbid human habitation. Now, I believe that those mountains are probably electrically charged, so it's probably not a good idea to live there anyway. Here, the indrawing sea begins. Here, the ship's compass does not hold, nor can ships containing iron turn back. There are many stories that I've come across, and I am still coming across. And one day I'll put all of these together, just to give like a huge reference to all of them or something. But in the meantime, go over to Waking Up with Analog. It's like he's super good at that. But anyways, that magnetic force, think about it. If it is strong enough to pull the compass of your needle in the direction of that mountain from way over here, wherever you are, imagine how strong it is on the nails that are put into the masts of these ships and into the ships themselves, or any iron or any metal that gets close within a few miles. It's going to take off. You know what I mean? It's going to go in that direction, which also means that it could become very dangerous, right? With all of that metal debris flying through the air and whatnot. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just, I'm going to close out this particular website real quick. And let's see. Here's everybody over here. All right, let me jump in the chat. I'm going to open up the chat to questions and comments for about 5 minutes. Wow, like over 400 people are watching. Like, I can't believe it. Like, how awesome. All right, if you do have a question or a comment, go ahead and type in @JayDreamerZ. I'm going to go ahead and get your comments so that I can put them up on the screen. And I'll be happy just to hang out with all of you for just a bit. Remember, I was not in the chat this entire time. So let me just go ahead and I'm going to take this down. Boom. And I'm going to scooch this over. Actually, scooch this one over here so we can have something cool to look at while we hang out with each other. All right, cool. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the chat up on the screen for us so that I can put your comments on the screen as well. Thank you so much to everybody who has, you know, been kind and given donations or become members or even subscribe to my channel. It's an honor. What are we, like over 88,000 subscribers right now? My God, like how exciting. I'm so excited. I think it's so cool because this is all cool information, right? Isn't it? It's fun. I like to combine the creativity and the wondrous side of our world, just like we saw things when we were children, with the things that we have since learned as adults, or our analytical side, our intellectual side, and put those two things together to give my perspective and my path a balance to it. And in the chat, we have, first thing I see is Anne-Marie Penton says, Jay, wait, where's your comment? Does it work? Oh, I got it behind everything. Hold on one sec. Let me scooch it up here. Pow. All right, there we go. Cool. And I'll make it bigger too so we can actually read your comments. Anne-Marie Penton says, great info as always. Thank you. That's very kind of you. We got Kat Van Du who says, JayDreamerZ, the word you're looking for is transmutation. Great presentation. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll probably not forget that anymore. Pythius and Ernst says, JayDreamerZ, woo, nice presentation. Etymology, comparative mythology, archaeology, calendrics, right? Like these things are amazing. We might talk about myths and legends and fantasy and fiction and stuff, but not in a way that is purely to entertain, but to edify, right? They resonate with us and we find that they have basis in reality. Vince is in the chat and says, the truth is pretty cool. I agree. The Green Man says, Jay, have you looked more into the quality of copper that Mount Meru is made out of? I'm not 100% that it's made out of copper. It may be iron. I'm not sure, honestly. It's definitely metallic in nature and magnetic in nature. So copper and iron are probably my top two that I would guess that it is made out of. But I still need to do more studying along those lines. Let's see. Just Ask Jay. Whoever it is for, somebody's trying to help him out. Asking for a friend. I'm trying to reverse engineer the chat right now. What's the question? Asking for someone else. My God, somebody. This is so funny. What's the question? Who is it? It's 17 Joy. Where is she? I'm looking for 17 Joy right now. She's got some kind of question to ask me on behalf of somebody else. Where is it? 17 Joy. Oh, somebody's blocked from chat. Oh my goodness. Listen, during live streams is not typically the time to ask about like, hey, why am I blocked, etc. I will be very honest with all of you, okay? I go over the chats after every single live stream, and I go over many different comments and stuff. If I see one that is negative and it's designed to bring people down or to just spread bad vibes, or and it's my interpretation, I will block people from my entire channel and they will never be able to chat or anything. And I don't tell people and I don't warn people. I just get rid of them. That's what I do. But I don't know what exactly what's being said right now. So let me try to help you out. I will try to help you out now that I did bring it up, if I can. All right, let's see here. I'm in the chat. Let's see. Thank you, Joe Cool. Super appreciate it. Let's see. I'm going to give this about 10 more seconds. Unblocking chat friend. You need to be way more specific, please. Like, we're in a live stream right now. So retype your question and I will answer it. But you're running out of time. Alex Dunn, in the meantime, says, JayDreamerZ, do you think that the unnavigable sludge mass that's created by the maelstrom is represented of something like an asteroid field in Star Wars? Yeah, I guess you could definitely make that correlation, right? Like, that's the space version of it. All right, let me get back down here and see if there's anything from the 17 person. All I see is thanks, JayDreamerZ. You're welcome, but I don't know why you're thanking me, because I still don't know what your question was. Right? You can't type to me in shorthand when we're on a live stream. You have to give me all of your context and everything from the beginning as if I was not reading the chat whatsoever and I'm clueless. Okay? I was mentioned in a video from Goldgavalamste. Oh, that's cool. I'm probably going to go check it out and see what he said. Hopefully it's good stuff. I hope so. I do like that dude's his content. All right, GGG Triple G6 says, JayDreamerZ, the plasma of the sun and the moon are held in the circular track by magnetism of Mount Meru. Let's see. Wow, all these people are saying that I got a big old shout out from this other channel. That's cool. Unblock famous David M. I still, are you just asking me to unblock somebody who's been blocked? The answer is a big fat no. I'm not going to. Right? And you haven't even given me good reason to do so. So I don't mean to be rude or anything, but if you are blocked on my channel, the only way, right, unless you happen to know me personally or something, that I'm going to unblock people. And I don't want to hear this every time we do a live stream, because it sort of throws a wrench into the system, and it takes away from the vibe and the flow. You know what I mean? Now is not a tactful time to ask me to like unblock people. I don't do that. Okay. I'm not going to do that. If people out there insult others, if they're negative in nature, and I'm not saying things that I would disagree with or anything, you need to be tactful on my channel. Okay? So I just want to let you all know, if you are blocked, there's no way I could, even if I wanted to, go through my list of blocked people. I've done this a couple of times. This is why I'm telling you from experience. Okay? It's not something I enjoy doing. Let me get that comment off there. I don't enjoy doing it. It's very difficult to do it because there are literally hundreds and hundreds of people who are blocked from my channel, which is why we have such an awesome time in the chat, right? Because I have done my own work in cleaning things out. Yes, I understand that they're asking for somebody named David M. Unfortunately, I don't know who that is. Okay. If you guys know who that is, fine. Awesome. Best. I wish them the best, but I don't know who that is at all. You know what I mean? So no offense, but I'm not doing that. All right. Anybody else? Anybody else? Musa Qureshi says, are we living inside of an eye? Do you think that I have the answer to that? I don't know. I've actually heard that quite a few times, that many people say that we're living inside of an eyeball. I don't really lean towards an actual physical eyeball. I understand that everything is fractal and that the eye shares certain features as our local cosmology. But to me, I don't feel like I've stumbled onto a lot of evidence that indicates that we live inside of a physical, actual eyeball. Because if we leave the sky, which would be the lens for that eyeball, then we would be instead of in space or whatever, we would be like in another world, and we would see that world in all of its glory or whatever. I actually tend to be more along the lines of if we live inside of any type of an organism, I feel like it is the mind. I feel like it is the brain of another entity. But I like the eyeball one. I like it. I feel like it's got a lot of good truth in there, but I'm not convinced that it's an actual physical eyeball. Freedom says, JayDreamerZ, have you ever wondered if the shape of this planet, Mount Meru, and the anode and cathode and the opening in the sky resemble your jellyfish logo? I have not wondered that. I know that because it is purposefully done. I made that jellyfish logo and I designed it, and that is what it represents. All right, Zombie SG says, JayDreamerZ, would you do a Truth in Movies covering the 2022 Disney movie Strange World? Thank you. That is actually the one I was trying to think of earlier today. I couldn't think of it earlier. Oh, man. All right, well, I'm starting to get a little bit tired. That was a lot of reading today. And I had a great time hanging out with everybody. I would like to hang out more. Maybe I'll do like a more casual live stream later this week so that I can actually engage everybody in the chat and stuff. But for now, I feel like it's time to say goodbye. So until next time, I am JayDreamerZ saying good vibes. Thank you to Droopy for your last second donation. Appreciate you. And goodbye.
Ooh.